I told her everything. She knows about us.
Oh my God.
I thought it was weird when she started watching me too closely, like someone waiting for a mistake. Me and Anna were 1 month away from the wedding. Everything ready. And suddenly the air between us got heavy. Too many questions. Looks that lasted too long. I thought it was pre-wedding anxiety. It wasn't. Scene 1. There are things you don't forget. Not because they matter, but because they hurt in a place that never really heals. I remember the smell of cold coffee in the kitchen that morning. The way the sunlight hit the table and lit up every scratch we pretended not to see. Anna was sitting across from me, but her gaze was somewhere else, in a territory I didn't know, and that honestly scared me. 1 month left for the wedding. 1 month? The date was stuck to the fridge with a colorful magnet she'd bought in one of those cute stuff stores. The kind of thing that makes you believe everything will work out because even the details match. Except nothing was matching anymore. She asked, "You're playing at the bar tonight?" It was a simple question, but the way she paused right after, waiting for my answer like someone waiting for a confession, made me choke on my own silence. I said yes, that it was Thursday, that I always played on Thursdays. She nodded slowly, biting her lip in a way I knew, that way of holding something too big to fit in her mouth. Then she stood up, washed her cup, and left the kitchen without looking back. I stayed there, feeling like I'd just lost something I didn't even know was on the line. Later, while I was getting my guitar ready, I noticed my hands were shaking. Not from nerves, from fear. Fear that she was seeing something in me that I still wasn't brave enough to admit. Fear that she might be right. Scene 2. We had a good life. Simple, but good. Small apartment near downtown. 3rd floor of a building with no elevator that Anna said had charm, but honestly was just old. Walls we painted together on a lazy Sunday, staining our clothes, laughing when one of the rollers fell and splattered paint on my sneakers. She'd picked a shade of light gray called Dawn Cloud, and I pretended to understand, but in the end I just wanted her to be happy. The shelves were full of books she read, and I pretended I would read. Romance novels, thrillers, biographies. She marked passages with yellow sticky notes and sometimes read them out loud to me while I washed the dishes. There was a low jazz playlist on while we cooked. Miles Davis, Chet Baker, those names she said with reverence and that I memorized just to see her smile when I said them right. There were silly laughs because of inside jokes. Like the time we burned a lasagna and ended up ordering pizza at 11 at night, sitting on the floor since the couch hadn't arrived yet. Or when she tripped on the rug and knocked over a plant, dirt everywhere, and instead of getting mad, she laughed so hard she cried. I loved that. Loved the way she turned disasters into memories. It was the kind of love that doesn't need captions, doesn't need grand gestures. That exists in the comfortable silence of a Saturday morning, with coffee dripping in the machine and sunlight coming through the window, lighting the dust particles floating like slow snow. But in the last days, maybe weeks, I wasn't sure anymore when it started. Something had changed. It was subtle. Like when you smell smoke but don't see fire. Like when the fridge starts making a weird noise and you ignore it until the day it dies. Anna started watching me differently, not with affection, with study, like she was trying to find a crack she already knew was there, but needed to map out to understand the damage. She asked questions that seemed innocent, but came loaded with something heavier, something that stayed in the air after the words came out. Who's gonna be at the bar tonight? Pause. Have you been talking to someone new? Longer pause. Have you been missing something? And every time I answered, I felt like I was being graded, like there was a right answer and a wrong one, but I didn't know which was which, so I answered with half-truths, because the full truth felt too heavy to put into words. Because admitting that sometimes I felt invisible even beside her felt like betrayal. I should have asked what was going on. Should have sat with her, held her hand, that small, warm hand that always fit perfectly in mine, and said, "Talk to me. What are you feeling?" But I didn't, because a part of me, the coward part, the part that prefers to ignore instead of face things, the part that thinks time fixes everything, thought it was easier to pretend everything was fine. There was one night that now, looking back, feels like a turning point. We had just come back from dinner at her parents' place. Dinner had been good, normal. We talked about the wedding, about the honeymoon we were still planning, about having kids someday. Her mom had shown old pictures of Anna as a kid. We laughed, and for a moment everything seemed in place. But on the way back home, inside the car, the silence felt different. Not that comfortable silence of people who don't need to fill every second with words. It was dense, heavy, almost physical. I looked at her in the passenger seat. She was looking out the window, her reflection showing an expression I couldn't read. "You okay?" I asked, and my voice came out low, almost scared of the answer. She took a while to respond. Seconds that felt like minutes. Then, without taking her eyes off the window, she said, "Sometimes I wonder if you really want this." My heart tightened. Want what? This. Us. The wedding. Everything. I wanted to shout that yes. Of course I wanted it. That she was everything to me. But the word got stuck. Because deep down, in the place where truth lives and we avoid looking, I wasn't sure if I was answering with conviction or obligation. "I do," I said, finally. But my voice came out weak, and I knew she'd heard the hesitation. She just nodded, didn't say another word. And when we got home, she went straight to the room, got changed, and lay down with her back to me. I stood at the door for a while, looking at her back, at the way her shoulders rose and fell as she breathed, and wondered when we started sleeping like strangers. At night, when she lay beside me, I felt her body stiff, like every muscle was holding a word it couldn't say, an accusation without shape yet. I hugged her from behind, trying to bring back that closeness that used to come naturally. She let me, but didn't relax. Didn't fit against me like before. It was like hugging a wooden version of her. There, but not there. I fell asleep feeling like I was holding a version of us that didn't exist anymore. Like the apartment, the painted walls, the bookshelves, the inside jokes, all of it was just the set of a play that had already ended. But we kept performing out of habit. Scene 3. I noticed before I admitted it. You know when you feel something's wrong, but your brain doesn't want to process it because processing means having to act. That's how it was. Anna started watching me from the inside out, like she was looking for a pen mark at the bottom of a glass. Like every gesture of mine was a clue of something she'd already decided was real. And every question came with a pause that hurt, that weighed, that made me feel guilty for something I hadn't done, at least not with my hands. "Are you going to be long at the bar tonight?" she asked on a Tuesday morning while making coffee. Simple question. But the way it fell on the table between her cup and mine made me want to say I wouldn't go, that I'd stay home, cancel everything, just to see if her lungs would fill with air again. I told her I didn't know, that it depended, that probably yes, and she just nodded, but her nod was loaded with something I couldn't name. Disappointment, confirmation, fear. I started noticing the details. She didn't look at me the moment I opened the door when I got home. She waited a second longer, like someone adjusting focus before clicking. Like she needed to prepare herself for whatever she'd see. And I started wondering what she was looking for that wasn't my voice saying, "I'm home." There was one afternoon when it got especially clear. It was Saturday, late afternoon, and we were sitting in the living room. Me on the couch, her on the armchair. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. I was on my phone. She was reading a book, or pretending to. Because I noticed she hadn't turned a page in about 10 minutes. The coffee she'd made earlier was on the little table between us, cold, untouched. A fly had landed on the rim of her cup, and she didn't even move to shoo it away. She just stayed there, staring at the page, eyes fixed but empty. "Anna," I called, my voice louder than I meant, breaking the silence almost violently. She blinked, like coming back from far away. "What? You okay?" She looked at me, really looked, and for a second, I saw something in her face that froze me. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness. It was worse. It was resignation, like she'd already decided something but wasn't ready to say it yet. "I'm fine," she said, but the word came out without conviction, like a poorly rehearsed lie. "No, you're not," I insisted, dropping my phone on the table. The thud echoed in the silence. "Talk to me. What's going on?" She closed the book slowly, marking the page with her finger, and sighed. The kind of sigh that carries months of unsaid things. Do you still love me? The question hit me like a punch in the gut. What? Of course I love you. Why are you asking that? Because you seem distant, she said, her voice trembling. Like you're here but not here. Like a part of you already left. I wanted to disagree. Wanted to say she was exaggerating, that it was all in her head. But I couldn't. Because she was right. I was distant. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was scared. Scared of not being enough. Scared that one day she'd realize she'd chosen wrong. Scared that her love for me had an expiration date. I don't know what you want me to say, was what came out of my mouth, and the second I said it, I knew it was the worst possible answer. She bit her lip, holding something, a tear, a word, an accusation. Then she stood up, grabbed the cold cup, and went to the kitchen. I heard the faucet running, dishes clinking, every sound amplified by the silence between us. I stayed there, alone in the living room, feeling like I'd just failed a test I didn't even know I was taking. And the worst part, I still had no idea the test was real, literal, planned. Every tiny clink of the spoon in that afternoon coffee felt like a clock with no hands, counting down something that wasn't ours. A countdown to something I couldn't see yet but could already feel coming like a storm on the horizon. That's when the heaviest, bitterest realization hit me. I was being tested, and I didn't even know what the test was, who graded it, or what the passing score was. And worse, a part of me already knew I'd fail before even starting. When you really love someone, the gaze becomes shelter, not interrogation. A gaze becomes home, not a courtroom. Realizing that too late is like reading the manual after you've already put the furniture together wrong. After all the screws are in place and there's no way to take it apart without breaking everything. Scene 4. The next week, Livia came back, and the next too. Always with a good excuse. I was passing by, I missed your music, I brought a producer friend but he couldn't make it. Every time, the conversation got longer, more intimate, more dangerous. She knew things about me I didn't remember telling her. Knew I liked my coffee without sugar. That my favorite song was one almost nobody knew. That I was afraid of not being good enough. How did she know? I didn't ask. Because when someone sees you the way you want to be seen, you don't ask how, you just accept it. Anna, at home, was growing more distant. Or maybe I was. Conversations got short, mechanical. How was your day? Good, and yours? Okay. Silence. Phone. Sleep. Repeat. I convinced myself it was pre-wedding anxiety, that it was normal, that everybody goes through it. But deep down, in the place where truth lives, and we avoid looking, I knew I was using the wedding as an excuse to avoid facing what was really happening. I was letting someone else in. One night, while Anna slept, I grabbed my phone and saw a message from Livia. Thought of you today. Hope you're okay. Simple. Innocent. But my heart raced. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. I left it there, like someone leaving a door slightly open just to see what happens. Scene 5. I remember when I met Anna. Not in that vague way you remember important dates, but with a photographic clarity that hurts. Every detail is still carved in my mind like it happened yesterday, not 3 years ago. It was at a small gig, in an even smaller bar than the one I was playing at now. One of those places with low ceilings, exposed brick walls, and the smell of spilled beer that stuck to your shoes. I was 26, and convinced I'd spend my whole life playing for crowds of 20 people who talked too loud and paid too little attention. Not bitterness, just realism. I'd accepted that music would be my side thing, not my life. That I'd be the guy who played well, but never well enough. And that was fine. Or at least, that's what I told myself every time I stepped on that makeshift stage. That night, the bar was fuller than usual. There was a birthday party in the back. Constant noise, loud laughs, bottles clinking, chairs scraping. I was used to competing with noise. I tuned my guitar, tested the mic, and started playing. That's when I saw her. Anna was in a group of 4 friends near the window. They were laughing, talking, clearly enjoying the night. But when I started playing, maybe it was Wonderwall or Blackbird, I'm not sure, She stopped. Just stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone hit pause on her world. Her friends kept talking, gesturing. But Anna stayed still, glass in hand, eyes fixed on me. And she looked at me like every chord was a private conversation between us. Like the music was saying something only she could hear. That had never happened to me before. I was used to being part of the scenery, background noise for other people's nights. But there was someone actually listening, actually seeing, and it threw me off in a way I wasn't ready for. I played 3 songs in a row, and through all of them, she didn't look away, didn't pick up her phone, didn't turn to her friends, just stayed there with that look that seemed to say, "I see you, and you're more than you think." When I finished and stepped off the stage, my heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with the music. I went to the bar to get some water, trying not to look in her direction, when I heard a voice behind me. "You play really well." I turned around and she was right there. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Not in that obvious magazine way, but in that real, human way that makes you want to know the person behind the face. She had dark eyes, hair tied back in a kind of messy way, and a crooked smile that felt like it carried an inside joke I didn't know yet, but already wanted to. "Thanks," I said, my voice more nervous than I wanted. "No, I mean it," she insisted, her sincerity disarming. "You've got something special. Most people play well, but you feel what you're playing, and we feel it with you." I didn't know what to say. I'd spent years playing without hearing a compliment like that, without getting real validation. And suddenly someone was telling me exactly what I needed to hear, something I'd never admitted even to myself. "I'm Anna," she said, holding out her hand. I'm... My brain froze. I literally forgot my own name for a second. She laughed, a beautiful, genuine laugh, with no cruelty. "Sorry, I'm Lucas." "Lucas," she repeated, like testing the sound. "It suits you." We talked for hours. Or at least it felt like hours. Time did that weird thing it does when you're with someone who makes the rest of the world disappear. Her friends left at some point, but she stayed. The bar started to empty, and we stayed at a table in the corner, empty glasses between us, conversations jumping from shallow to deep without warning. She told me she worked with graphic design, that she'd moved to the city 2 years before, that she loved suspense books and movies everyone else hated. I told her about music, how I'd started playing at 12 because my grandpa gave me an old guitar, how I dreamed of recording an album but was scared I wasn't good enough. "You are," she said, without hesitation. "Good enough. You just need to believe it." And the crazy thing, I believed her. Not because she said it convincingly, but because for the first time, someone looked at me and saw what I couldn't see in myself. And that changed something small but fundamental. When the bar closed at 2 in the morning, we walked to her bus stop together. It was a cold night and she'd forgotten her jacket. I offered mine, and she accepted, wrapping herself in it in a way that made my chest tighten. It was way too big on her, the sleeves covering her hands, and she looked like a kid wearing adult clothes. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Can I see you again?" I asked, my voice shaking a bit. I wasn't good at this, never was. But with her, it felt worth the risk. She smiled, that crooked smile that was already becoming my favorite. "I'd be upset if you didn't ask." We exchanged numbers. Her bus arrived. She got on, and before going in, she turned and waved. And I stayed there at the empty stop, cold biting at me, but with my chest warm in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. In the first weeks, the world shrunk to fit on her couch. Well, her couch, since I still lived with 2 roommates in an apartment that smelled like mold and had piles of dirty laundry on the floor. We ate takeout pizza, watched shows we pretended to follow more than we actually did, and laughed at jokes that made sense only to us. She had this childish desire to keep Sundays in her pocket, as she put it. "If I could, I'd stretch Sunday through the whole week," she said once, lying on my chest, drawing circles on my arm. And I agreed, because with her even Monday felt like Sunday. I gave her a song, I wrote it for her during a sleepless night. It wasn't perfect. Had parts I wanted to fix. But when I played it for her in her living room, sitting with the guitar on my lap, she cried. Not from sadness, from emotion. From feeling seen in a way she said she never had. And she gave me a key. Literally. The key to her place. 3 months after we met, she held out her hand with the small silver key in her palm and said, "I want you to have somewhere to come back to. Always." And that's something that will always be true, no matter how it ended. That's why it hurts so much, because it wasn't a lie from start to finish. It was love that at some point got scared of its own reflection, looked ahead, and saw too much future, too much commitment, too much weight. It's strange how memory chooses the right lights and shuts off the shadows. When I think of those first months, everything is golden, cinematic, perfect. But we fought too. Had days we didn't understand each other. Moments when I was selfish, too focused on my music and not enough on her. Times she wanted presents and I offered excuses. But we always came back, always talked, always fixed it. Because deep down, love was bigger than the mistakes. Or at least, that's what we believed. Until it wasn't. Until the crack got too big to ignore. Until the day she decided she needed proof. And I decided outside validation mattered more than inner certainty. And everything collapsed. Not all at once, but slowly. Like a condemned building that stays standing for a while even though everyone knows it'll fall. If one day you love someone and all of this feels too big, too scary, too vulnerable, hold on to the simple things. Hold on to morning coffee. Hold on to silly laughs. Hold on to the songs written for you and the keys put in your hand. Because it's in the simple things that you breathe when the rest turns to smoke. It's in them that you remember why you started. And maybe, if there's Scene 6. In the third week, Livia changed the game. We were in the narrow back hallway of the bar, that tight space where only one person fits at a time, and she leaned against me. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional, calculated, and she said, real quiet, almost in my ear, "Your fiancé is lucky, or maybe not that lucky." My whole body froze. It was like time stopped to let me choose who I was going to be. And I chose to step back, not because I was some hero, but because fear was stronger than desire. But here's the part that shames me. Stepping back hurt. It hurt like I'd lost something that was never mine. And that feeling, revealed more than any action could. Because it showed that part of me wanted it. Really wanted it. I went home in silence. Anna was awake, waiting. She asked if everything was okay. I said yes. But my voice came out thin, shaky. She hugged me, and I almost confessed everything right there. Almost. But the words got stuck, and I swallowed them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, feeling the weight of guilt for something I hadn't fully done, but that was already rooted in my intentions. Scene 7. On the third night she showed up. The bar was packed. It was someone's birthday. Someone I didn't know. And the energy was different. Louder, messier, more chaotic. I had just finished an especially draining set. The kind where your fingers burn and your throat feels dry from singing over the noise of conversations. I stepped off the stage and went straight to the back, looking for a glass of water and 2 minutes of silence. The hallway leading to the storage room and the staff bathroom was narrow, the kind that barely fits one person at a time, with unpainted brick walls and a yellow light bulb hanging from the ceiling that flickered now and then. I was leaning against the wall, drinking water straight from the bottle, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and it was Livia. She looked different that night. I don't know if it was the outfit, a simple dress that somehow stood out, or the way she looked at me, like someone who had already decided something and was just waiting for the right moment to execute it. "Hey," she said, her voice low, almost intimate, completely out of place with the noise coming from the front. "Hey," I answered, and instantly felt I should have said something else. Something more distant, more professional. But the word was already out. She took a step forward. The hallway was so narrow that, with that step, the space between us became dangerously small. I could smell her perfume. Something floral with a woody base that lingered in the air. "You're getting better every time you play," she said, tilting her head slightly, her eyes fixed on mine like she was reading something written on my forehead. "Thanks," I said, my voice coming out rougher than it should have been. I cleared my throat, trying to hide it. She smiled. Not the smile from before, the calculated one pretending to be spontaneous. This was a different one. A smile that said, "I know exactly what I'm doing." "Your fiancé is lucky," she said, holding the pause deliberately, like an actress who knows the exact moment to deliver the punchline. Or maybe not that lucky. My whole body froze. It wasn't a conscious reaction. It was automatic, like when you touch something hot and pull away before you even feel the burn. But the freezing came with something else, something I didn't want to admit. But that was there, pounding in my chest like a fire alarm you try to ignore. It was desire. Not just physical, though that was there too. It was the desire to be chosen. To be seen as special by someone who seemed to have so many options. To feel that adrenaline of standing on the edge of something forbidden and feeling it more intense, more real, more alive because of it. She placed her hand on my shoulder. A soft touch, almost casual, but full of intention. I felt the warmth of her palm through my shirt, and my body reacted in ways I couldn't control. Heart racing, breath turning uneven, throat tightening. "You deserve someone who really sees you," she went on, her voice still low, almost a whisper. "Someone who isn't afraid of who you are." And that sentence, that damn sentence, hit a place I didn't even know was exposed. Because deep down, that's exactly how I felt. That Anna was afraid of my potential, afraid I'd be bigger than the life we were building, afraid of losing me to something, or someone, she couldn't compete with. Of course it was crazy. Of course it was projection. Of course it was my insecurity looking for outside validation. But in that moment, in that narrow hallway, with the flickering light and the muffled bar noise behind us, it felt true. It felt like revelation. I should have stepped back immediately, should have taken a step away, said something like, "Sorry, I have a fiancé," and walked out. But that's not what happened. I stayed there, still, for 2, maybe 3 seconds that felt eternal, looking at her, feeling her hand on my shoulder, letting that sentence echo in my chest like music in an empty room. And then, finally, the alarm inside me got too loud to ignore. I stepped back, not abruptly, but deliberately. I moved my shoulder away from her hand and took a step aside, creating distance. I need to get back," I said, my voice coming out strange, broken, like each word was physical effort. She didn't look offended. She looked satisfied, like she'd gotten what she wanted, like the goal wasn't to seduce me fully, but to plant something. A seed, a doubt, a crack. "Sure," she said, smiling. "See you around." I walked past her, our arms brushing because the hallway was too narrow, and I felt heat rush up my neck. When I got back to the bar, I grabbed another cup of water and drank it all at once, as if I could wash away what I'd just felt. But here's the part that shames me the most. It hurt to pull away. It hurt physically, emotionally, like I'd lost something that was never mine to begin with. Like choosing the right thing meant giving up something valuable. And that feeling, was more revealing than any action, because it showed part of me wanted it, really wanted it. Not necessarily Livia, but what she represented. Validation, novelty, escape from a relationship that had gotten too heavy, too complicated, too real. I went home in silence that night. The bus ride felt longer than usual. I stared out the window, watching the city pass in streaks of light, trying to organize thoughts that felt like an incomprehensible mess. When I entered the apartment, Anna was awake. She sat on the couch with her laptop on her lap, but the screen was off. Only the lamp beside her lit up her face, casting shadows that made her look older, more tired. "Everything okay?" she asked. And there was something in her voice, tension, expectation, that made me feel like I was walking in after committing a crime. "Yeah," I said, but my voice came out thin, cracked, and I knew she'd heard the lie. She looked at me for a long moment, didn't say anything, just closed the laptop and stood up. She came to me and hugged me. A tight, desperate hug, like someone holding onto something that was slipping. And I almost confessed everything right there. Almost. The words climbed my throat, reached my mouth, but got stuck behind my teeth. Because confessing meant making it real. Meant giving shape to something that, left unspoken, could still be minimized, ignored, forgotten. So I swallowed it back. I hugged her too, and pretended everything was fine. But it wasn't. And we both knew it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, mine and hers, feeling the weight of guilt for something I hadn't fully done, but that was already rooted in my intentions, my hesitations, my failures. And the worst part, I knew I'd have to tell her. Not because I was a hero, but because keeping a secret like that is like keeping embers in your pocket. It burns sooner or later. Scene 8. The next day, I woke up feeling like I'd slept with a stone in my stomach. Anna was already awake, in the kitchen, making coffee. I could hear the water boiling, the spoon hitting the cup, the everyday sounds that suddenly felt amplified, almost aggressive. I stayed in bed a few more minutes, gathering courage. I knew that if I didn't tell her now, I never would. I'd swallow it, bury it, let it rot inside me until it turned into something worse, something destructive. I got up, put on a t-shirt, and went to the kitchen. Anna was facing away, stirring her coffee, and when she heard me come in, she turned around. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked tired, sad, like she already knew something bad was coming. "Morning," she said, her voice too soft, like she was walking on glass. "Morning," I replied, and went straight to the point before courage slipped away. "We need to talk." Her smile died. She placed the cup on the table slowly, as if afraid a sudden movement might break everything for good. "About what?" she asked. But the way she asked told me she already knew, or at least suspected. We sat in the living room, me on the couch, her on the armchair. The same setup from that Saturday afternoon when she'd asked if I still loved her. It felt like years ago, but it had been just weeks. I took a deep breath and started talking. I told her about Livia, about how she'd shown up at the bar, about the conversations, about how she seemed to know me in ways that didn't make sense, about the hallway, the touch on my shoulder, the sentence, "Your fiancé is lucky, or maybe not that lucky." Each word felt like ripping something out of me, and Anna listened in silence, her face growing paler, her eyes filling with tears she tried to hold back but couldn't. They ran down her cheeks, slow and steady. "I stepped back," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't do anything. I didn't kiss her. I didn't touch her. But I hesitated. And that kills me. Because the hesitation is already a betrayal, isn't it?" I expected her to scream, to call me an idiot, to throw something. But she didn't. She just cried. Cried in that silent, deep way of someone watching their world fall apart in slow motion without being able to stop it. And then, between sobs, she said the words that changed everything. "I hired her." It took me a moment to process. "What?" "Livia," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I hired her. She's an actress. I paid her to test you." The world stopped. Literally stopped. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, a dull, heavy sound that muted everything else. You did what?" My voice came out strange, high-pitched, like it didn't belong to me. She stood up, walked to the window, her back to me, her shoulders trembling. "I was scared," she said, her voice breaking. "Scared you wouldn't be loyal. Scared of marrying you and finding out too late you weren't who I thought you were. So I hired her, just to be sure, just to sleep peacefully." I felt anger, pain, betrayal, confusion, all at once, exploding in my chest like fireworks burning from the inside. I stood up, took 2 steps, and stopped. I didn't know if I wanted to hug her or walk out and never come back. "How could you?" I managed to say, each word heavy like lead. "How could you do that to me? You don't trust me. After 3 years? After everything? She turned around, her face red, eyes swollen. I wanted to trust, but I was scared. And now I see I was right to be scared because I almost nothing, I shouted, my voice echoing in the room. I stepped back. I chose you. Even without knowing it was a test, I chose you. But you hesitated, she said, her voice cracking. You hesitated. And that's enough to show that maybe we're not ready. I stayed silent. Because she was right. I had hesitated. And hesitation, in that context, was a verdict. There's more, she said, her voice dropping even lower, almost a whisper. More, I repeated, not believing there could be anything else. I tried to stop it, a week ago, when I saw it was going too far. But Livia, she said she didn't want to stop anymore, that she'd fallen for you, that it was real. My stomach twisted. What? Anna picked up her phone from the table, unlocked it with trembling hands, and showed me the screen. Messages from Livia, dozens of them, all recent, all threatening. You can't silence me. He deserves the truth. I'm not a fantasy, I'm real. I'll tell him everything. And then, further down, a link. Anna clicked it. The screen loaded, and a video appeared. Short, recorded from far away, but clear enough. Me and Livia in the hallway. Her touching me freezing. Staying there, 2-3 seconds, before stepping back. No kiss, no touching beyond the shoulder. But it showed hesitation. Showed that for a moment, I'd considered it. And that was worse than any physical proof. Because betrayal isn't just the act, it's the intention. The desire you feed in silence. The door you don't close when you should. Anna dropped the phone on the table like it burned. I stared at the black screen, seeing my distorted reflection, and didn't recognize the man there. Who is that guy? I thought. Who's the guy who complains about loyalty but almost fell for the first well-packaged temptation? I trusted you, Anna said, voice in pieces. But I also didn't trust you. And now look at us. Both wrong. Both broken. And I don't know if there's a way to fix it. I wanted to yell that she didn't have the right to test me like that. That trust isn't built on traps. That love isn't an experiment. But deep down, in the place where honesty lives and hurts, I knew she was right to doubt, because I had failed. Not completely. But enough to show that, under the right circumstances, with the right validation, with the right loneliness, I was capable of slipping. We sat in silence for hours, or minutes. Time lost meaning. The house felt suffocating, like the walls were slowly closing in, stealing the air, leaving only guilt and pain to fill the space. And right there, in that heavy, unbearable silence, I knew there wouldn't be a wedding. No happy ending, no fixing it. Because some mistakes, even the almost mistakes, leave marks too deep to ignore. Scene 9. In the following days, the messages kept coming. Livia didn't stop. Audio from our conversations at the bar, where I laughed and made jokes that, out of context, sounded like flirting. Screenshots of my replies that were polite but isolated looked like interest. She was building a case against me with the precision of a prosecutor. And the worst part? I couldn't say it was a lie, because it wasn't. It had all happened. I had laughed. I had replied. I had let the conversation flow in a way it shouldn't have. Anna tried blocking Livia, but she kept making new numbers, new profiles. It was like trying to put out a fire with bare hands. Every time we thought it was over, another message came, another reminder, another piece of proof that I had been weak. One night, I slept on the couch. Not because Anna asked me to, but because I couldn't lie next to her without feeling like I was staining something already broken beyond repair. The pillow smelled like mildew, and the blue light from my phone cut through the dark as I reread the messages, trying to find the exact moment everything collapsed. I realized there wasn't one moment. There were several. Small ones. Invisible ones. Like cracks in a wall that widen until one day the whole thing collapses. I cried for the first time since I was a kid. Cried out of anger, shame, sadness for something I had helped destroy. And when the crying stopped, what remained was a deep, hollow emptiness that hurt more than any tear. Scene 10. I went to the bar the next Thursday. I don't know why. Maybe looking for some trace of normalcy in a place that didn't mean anything anymore. I sat on the empty stage, guitar on my lap, but the strings felt out of tune, and my hands too heavy to play. The bar owner came up to me. "You okay?" I said. "Yes." But the lie was so obvious he didn't insist. He just nodded and left, leaving me alone with the echo of my failures. I thought of all the times I'd stepped on that stage thinking I was special, thinking I had something nobody else had. But the truth was, I was just another insecure guy, craving validation in the wrong places. Livia didn't show up that night, and maybe that was worse, because her absence reminded me it had all been fake. Every smile, every compliment, every subtle touch wasn't about me. It was about the test, about proving a point, and I'd fallen for it like an idiot. Not because I was seduced, but because I wanted to believe it. Because deep down, I wanted to be seen as special, even if it was a lie. I went home around dawn. Anna was awake, sitting in the kitchen, holding a cup of cold tea. We looked at each other, but didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. Everything was already broken. Now, it was just a matter of deciding what to do with the pieces. Scene 11. The wedding didn't happen, obviously, but canceling it hurt more than I imagined. Not because of the money or the invitations, but because of what it symbolized. It was the end of a future we had built in our heads, a future that now only existed as a dead possibility. I went to the jewelry store to return the rings. The salesman looked at me with pity but didn't ask anything. He just took the box, typed something into the system, and said, "I'm sorry." I nodded and left, hands empty, chest lighter. Not from relief, from giving up. Anna and I talked one last time on a cold Sunday morning. We sat on the balcony of her apartment. It wasn't ours anymore, and never would be again. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and I probably looked worse. "I lost you the moment I decided to test you," she said, voice shaking, "and that's my fault. But you lost me too. The moment you left that door open." I wanted to disagree, wanted to tell her it wasn't like that, but it would have been a lie. She was right. I had opened that door. Not fully, but enough to let in a draft of cold air that froze everything we had. "I'm sorry," I said. And it was true. But regret doesn't fix anything. It just marks the place where you failed, like a scar that never completely fades. She cried. I cried. But we didn't hug. Because some endings don't deserve comfort. They deserve distance and respect for the pain we caused each other. Scene 12. Weeks later, I moved to a new apartment, not far, but far enough not to walk past places that reminded me of her. I stopped playing at the bar. Actually, I stopped playing altogether for a while, because every chord reminded me of the man I thought I was and wasn't. I started therapy. Not because anyone pressured me, but because I realized that if I didn't understand myself, I'd repeat the same mistakes with another face, another name, another story. And I was tired of being the villain in my own life. My therapist asked me hard questions. Why did you accept her attention? What were you looking for that you weren't finding at home? Do you really love Anna, or did you love the idea of her? It took weeks to answer, and when I finally did, it hurt. Because the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid Anna would someday realize she'd chosen wrong. So when Livia showed up, validating things I doubted in myself, I grabbed onto that like a lifeline. But it wasn't a lifeline. It was drowning disguised as air. I stopped following Anna on social media. Not out of anger, but because I needed to. For myself. For her too. Some loves don't end with hate. They end with respect. And with the certainty that even if the ending was painful, what existed in the middle was real. Scene 13. Today, 6 months later, I wake up without the weight of guilt crushing my chest. Not because I forgot, but because I learned to carry it differently. With more care, more honesty. I started playing again. Not at the bar, but at home, for myself. And I found out music sounds better when you're not trying to impress anyone. When it's just you, the strings, and the truth. I ran into Anna by accident at the grocery store. We both stopped, looked at each other, and smiled. Not the everything's fine smile. The we survived one. We talked briefly. She was doing well. I was too. We didn't exchange numbers, didn't promise to meet again, and it felt right that way. Because some chapters need to end for others to begin, and trying to rewrite what's already passed only stains the blank pages. That night, I sat by the window in my new apartment. The city breathed outside. Cars, distant laughter, life happening. I closed my eyes and inhaled the cold air, reminding myself that I'm still here, still alive, still learning. If I could go back and change something, I would. But I can't. And maybe that's for the best, because the pain taught me what happiness never did. That love without trust is a house without foundation. And before loving someone, you need to know yourself enough not to get lost on the way. Today I understand. Loyalty tests don't reveal who cheats. They reveal who doesn't trust. And the rest? The rest is what each person does with the wound. Whether it becomes a scar or a limit, an excuse or a lesson. I chose the lesson, and maybe one day, when I'm truly ready, I'll love again. But this time, with windows open, with truth on the table, and with the courage to be who I really am. No masks, no tests, no fear. Finale. Telling this story freed me in a way I didn't expect. Not because it erased what happened, but because it made me face it. And facing it hurts. But it also heals, slowly. In layers. If you're going through something like this, whether you were the one betrayed or the one who almost betrayed, know there's no easy answer. No magic formula. There's only the choice to wake up the next day and try to be a bit more honest with yourself. A bit braver. A bit more human. And if the love you have doesn't survive the test of truth, maybe it was never strong enough to last a lifetime. And that's okay. Because some loves come to teach us, not to stay. And the lesson, painful as it is worth every tear. Today, when I look back, I see a man who messed up, but I also see a man who grew, who learned, who chose to be different. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything.